Well, for me, being on the road and getting to interact, being back in the live saddle again, which I've been for the last, or at least Friday, Saturday, Sunday, speaking. It's been pretty sweet, pretty cool to interact with some new folks and several folks that have been around the world. Well, Daniel and JJ, I think they're probably going on something like, geez, I don't know, 34, 35 years. So that's pretty sweet. And of course, the conversation, the primary conversations about forgiveness, one of the things that gets clearer and clearer to me by the day, especially when I put my hands on people, as I was doing today with Patrick, is the urgency of restoring the breath anywhere in the structure, in the body, so-called body, where there's any kind of pain or trauma. And just to watch when that energy starts to move, how instantly the breath can be shut down, and how when we're aware, the breath can be restored, and it just changes absolutely everything. You know, one of our tools is the StillPoint Breathing tool, and we talk about energy and physics and all of that, but I think the real reason that the StillPoint Breathing tool, works is if we go to the original language in the Aramaic, where they talk about the creation story, it does not say in any way, shape, or form that the Creator sent out His Spirit. It's all Greek to us. That's just, Greek interpretations of those Aramaic words. Greek shifts and changes. And it really isn't even just being lost in translation. It's just been interpreted through a set of brain cells that didn't match what the original teachings were delivered from. And if you deliver a teaching out of a certain set of brain cells, in order for that set of brain cells to be moved, in order for that teaching to be moved into another mind, that other mind has to have a similar set of brain cells. Otherwise, everything will be misinterpreted. So Yeshua spoke about this as you have to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And so what we're working to do with the work we've done with the Enlightenment book, and we will continue to work with, is develop the brain cells for what was the Aramaic mind thinking when it uttered a sound that we call a word, and can we approximate that word in the English language? And, in many cases, it takes literally a whole paragraph to speak one word in Aramaic. And there are so many words that there's just absolutely no meaning for, no sound for in the English language. For instance, we've talked often about Rakhma. When they asked Yeshua what's most important in the law, he didn't say love your neighbor. He said have Rakhma for your neighbor. Well, so what? What does that mean? Isn't loving your neighbor enough? Well, no, actually, you just guaranteed your mind will end up in frustration and failure. Because guess what? You can't love your neighbor. It's not even possible. You got to have a verb before you can do it. and the word love represents a state of being. It doesn't represent something that we do. So when Yeshua says have Rakhma for neighbor, he's saying, the long form of that paragraph, there's a filter in the frontal lobes of your brain, the gateway in the frontal lobes of your brain, dual purpose. And you want to keep that gateway open and that filter active whenever you think of the Creator, whenever you think of neighbor. And that's pretty much the objects of intention that you can have in the world. In the Aramaic language, the word neighbor means anybody that you think about. It doesn't mean the guy down the block. And in Aramaic, you are your own neighbor if you think about yourself. So Rakhma for self, Rakhma for neighbor. What does that mean? That means that the gateway through which human life love enters the human form is open. And you get to function as a human in the presence of your neighbors. So in essence, that's what Yeshua is saying, is function as a human in the presence of your neighbors. What is a human? Well, I think one of the most powerful examples we can come up with, and to me, it's a very meaningful example because it's real. And here's Yeshua. He comes out of the Garden of Gethsemane, and he knows the high priest servant is on his way, He knows exactly what the high priest servant is going to do to him. Peter tries to interrupt the process, takes out his sword and whacks off the high priest servant's ear. Now, does Yeshua do what the average person would do, or does he demonstrate what a human life would do? The average person, knowing what the high priest servant was about to deliver to him, once he had the upper hand with the sword, would obviously say, "And now, out of here, or I'm going to take off your head." But you'll notice that human life turned to the man who was being violent and called him Satan. "Be behind me, Satan." And then he said what he means by that, "For you think in the mind of man." You're stuck in your own carbon-based memory, and there is no presence of love there. And then he turns to what the world would call the archenemy, the high priest servant. He does what a human being would do. He heals him. That's what Yeshua was calling for when they asked him what's most important in the law. That's what he offered. There's a way to be human, whatever's happening in your life. And when you are, everything changes. So that's the gateway aspect of that Aramaic word Rakhma. And the other is that it's a filter. Frontal lobes of the brain hold intentions. And Rakhma allows only intentions keyed to love to pass into awareness when that's active. There are two other filters. One is hostility, the other is fear. Hostility brings forward destructive intentions. Fear brings forward negative intentions. Rakhma brings forward loving intentions. So, what did it take? 3 paragraphs to explain that one simple concept from the Aramaic, and there's no such thing. So would you say that, looking at that the Greeks translated that when they said, "Oh, you're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself"? Do you think that's a translation, or is that just a total, complete misinterpretation? I think we need to acknowledge it for what it is. It's a complete misinterpretation. It fits in a philosophical system that was called Greek. And that whole philosophical system has been put in the mouth of a man named Yeshua. And that philosophical system does not belong there. So when we build the brain cells for the Aramaic words, and virtually every important word in the Aramaic language, every important word that's really relative to life is turned backward in the Greek interpretations. Love is not a state of being, it's sexual athletics. Or putting your head on the chopping block to prove you can sacrifice yourself for somebody else. Brain cells weren't what was firing in Yeshua's mind when he said, "Have Rakhma for your neighbor." Stand as a human being, as a condition of love, and function out of that condition of love, rather than functioning out of a mind based in hostility or fear, rather than functioning out of carbon-based memory, out of the past. Ruka. The Greeks translate that as some kind of disembodied spirit being. In Aramaic, it's a feminine elemental force that undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. And it's the breath. Stay in contact with the truth. If you hold your breath, your mind's about to lie to you. You've got to keep that breath active and moving. And what it will do, if there are places within you that are unconscious, and my offering is, it is totally unnatural to have an unconscious mind. If there are places in you that are unconscious and you restore the breath there, what the breath will do is it will undo those errors and the effects of those errors, and then it will deliver to you energetically an understanding of the truth. That's what the Greeks translated as Holy Spirit. Does that sound, or pardon me, interpreted as? Does it sound like a translation? No, it's an interpretation, and it's a totally just ridiculous one. Forgiveness. Yes, let them off the hook for what's going on inside of you. Nothing whatsoever to do with forgiveness. Forgiveness when you're instructed to forgive, you go inside yourself. You collapse the perceptual constructs of your mind that show you that your pain is outside of you. And by collapsing those perceptual constructs, you get to touch into the root of the pain inside of you. And when, as a human being, as love, you restore breath and the presence of love to a place in you that's pain, that pain will be undone. It will be forgiven. It will be removed. So we could go on and on with that list, but, you know, so what we're here to do is to build the brain cells so that when you hear something come out of Yeshua's mouth, you go, oh, that's what it means, and accurately know that that was what was firing in his brain cell structure. That's what he had the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And every time the mind comes up with a construct that's based in hostility or fear, the suggestion would be to forgive, to collapse that construct. Think in terms of forgiveness being, if I've got some sort of a painful energy moving in me, I want to collapse that energy. That's forgiveness. And the whole game begins to turn around. So we're here to support the game turning around on planet Earth. It's time. And Miss Jeanie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
Well, no. And nobody on Podbean has a question either, nor in the chat room, and no hands up. So I guess we can go back to the Enlightenment.
Okay, well, actually, I can't go back to the Enlightenment. Directly, at least. Because Dr. John, that I stayed with, that sponsored the workshops at Advanced Rejuvenation in Sarasota last week, did not have a copy of it. So I left my copy, which was actually your copy, with him yesterday. So I don't have a copy with me right now. So we need a question, a comment from somebody. If you're on a station where we can't see you, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you're listening to the show directly, and then if you push 1, we're here to have a conversation. What's on your mind? How can we support you?
We do have a hand up, and I happen to think, you know, I did breathe someone last night in a session.
Right.
And afterwards, and he's a physical therapist, chiropractor, and he informed me, I had told him afterwards that if he had one of those little, I don't know what to call it.
StillPoint inducer.
Yeah, the little cups that hold your head. And I explained to him that if we were doing in-person energy work, that, you know, I'd be doing the StillPoint move and the stretch. And he goes, oh, he said, the Medulla Oblongata, or whatever,
yep,
is actually called the mouth of God in the chiropractic realm. And the Occipital Cup
Bridge,
is referred to as the golden chalice. So I thought that was very interesting, and I was glad he shared that with me.
Yeah, that's really sweet. That's they're not terms that I had heard applied to those two parts of the cranial structure, but it certainly makes sense.
Yeah, that you just open it up when they're breathing and just create that open space. But we do have a hand up, and it is 765. I believe it's Miss Sunny. Welcome.
Hi, guys.
Hey there, young lady. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Apparently, we're right on track with each other. Actually, Jeanie, I went to my chiropractor, and those very areas, the Medulla Oblongata and the occipital regions were...
Occipital bridge.
Yes, he worked on all that yesterday. It definitely keeps our brain fluids flowing throughout the spinal cord, and, you know, some people know it as the oil or the Christos, different, you know, schools of thought. And, yeah, keeps everything flowing and going. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So
do you have a copy question for us today? How can we support you?
Yeah, I had a couple, Michael, quite actually. I was going to ask you if you would do the run-through on both Rakhma and Khooba in the back of the head. As you've described before, that was one. We could do the follow-through from what you opened up with that.
Let's just do one at a time then. So
okay.
Rakhma and Khooba. Rakhma is actually a filter in the frontal lobes of the brain, and Khooba is a filter in the back. And one is over the arena of intentions in the mind, and the other is over the arena of perceptions. And actually the two filters, when they are set together in Aramaic, were called perfect love. So when they said perfect love casts out fear, when they treated fear or enlightened us as to what fear was, is that it's a demon. That is, in Aramaic, it is a construct of disintegrative thoughts that coagulates as an image in the mind that we then try to place outside of ourselves. Then Rakhma and Khooba are, when active together, one, the mind cannot produce a fear-based reality, and the energetic patterns based in fear that are moving at any given moment will literally be removed from the structure, cast out. So the two together, again, were called perfect love. And what happens when Rakhma is set, as I say, the only intentions that the mind can use in bringing forward, the only energetic dynamics that the mind can use in bringing forward intentions are those key to love. And then in the back of the brain, over the perceptual area of the brain, the same action happens, except that Khooba, over the perceptual part of the brain, allows only brain cells that are connected to love to be used in building our perceptual constructs. And so a mind with perfect love it doesn't matter what the circumstance is. It could be the most, cancel the thought, the most horrific circumstance in the world, and the mind can't produce a fear-based reality. It will keep you connected to love, which means you'll be connected to your highest intuition and direction, and you'll know exactly what to do in that circumstance. Where, when we're cut off from that, what happens is people then get locked into carbon-based memories, hostility, and fear. And with that guidance system, all that people do is replicate past dynamics. The essence of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again?, is that people stuck in this cycle of hostility and fear, we call it the replicate mind, just replicate the same thing over and over and over again. And I feel honored that the universe reserved the title, Why Is This Happening to Me Again?, for my book. So does that fit? Was that what you were looking for with Rakhma and Khooba?
Yes, just hearing it, and then, like on a non-regulatory concept, the vision might be that we're getting Rakhma set, and then if we don't have the Khooba in order, stuff might get stuck in the middle. We've got to make sure we're really doing a thorough job, yeah? Otherwise, we're bouncing back and forth.
Actually, they are interdependent and interrelated filters. If Rakhma is set and we engage in the action of Rakhma, it will tend to engage Khooba. If Khooba is set, it will tend to engage Rakhma. So they're kind of a positive feedback loop. And if some sort of hostile intention is resonated in the frontal lobes of the brain, or some sort of hostile perception is resonated strongly enough, then it will tend to collapse those filters, and when one goes, the other goes. And one will be back to hostility and fear-based perception.
Yeah, but my visualization is just the way my brain works. My visualization is that I heard my head say, that's why we dropped the goal right there, so that the two can intermingle, let go of that goal, right?
Yes, when you let go of the goal, actually there's a little different action when you cancel a goal, when you realize that the goal is the driver of perception. And to back up into that, so it makes sense to everybody that's listening, there's some interesting Harvard research that was done back in the 1950s. It's actually the most quoted psychological research in psychological history, and it's never been proven to be anything other than accurate. Is that in a time frame where if we've got somebody's head hooked up to electrodes and we're measuring brain cell firings, in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells fire, The max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits of data. It's been estimated in that same time frame, which is about a 25th of a second, that there may be as much as 20 trillion bits of data in the actuality. So if we're in a 20 trillion bit world and the reducing valve called the mind reduces that to 10,000 brain cell firings, 10,000 bits of data moving, and then perception reduces it to 9, that reducing valve leaves us with just a tiny fragment of information in order to guide our behavior. And basically perception is that which was given to be what they spoke of it as was the light for your earthly light. It's the guide for your behavior. And then when they said, you know, if the light for you is darkness, which of course is a pretty silly idea, how can light be darkness? The word in Aramaic wasn't light, it was guide. So if the guide for your life is darkness, what's darkness? That's hostility and fear. If hostility or fear comes up for you, if that becomes the guide for your behavior, they said, well, how deep will your darkness become? What kind of crazy things will one do? And so the reason you cancel the goal is recognizing there are only 9 bits of data that get selected or recruited to build our perceptual reality. Obviously, something has to do that recruiting process. Something has to determine which 9 bits of data out of the 10,000 brain cells firing out of the 20 trillion bit world, which ones are going to be active. Something has to select that. And my offering would be that what selects which data is going to be firing is our goals. Through resonance, whatever the verbiage is of our goal is going to cause brain cells to fire, and when those brain cells fire, the mind will produce perception. Now, if Rakhma and Khooba have been lost...
Hold just a second. I don't know if it's just
Sure.
my phone, but for about the last minute and a half, your voice is like really bubbly, like you're underwater. Sonny, is it clear on your end?
Well,
No,
yours
I'm
is
hearing
actually
the same thing you're hearing, Jeanie. Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing you're hearing.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, let's hold that question. I'm going to hang up the phone and redial and see if we can get a better signal. I'll be right back.
Awesome.
Okay. And Jeanie, if you want to close my mic, I am driving, getting ready to pick up my group partner and run some errands, and we'll see what happens for Michael then. And you can let me know when you're ready to open my mic, or I'll just have to hit one again, whatever that looks like on your screen. Thank you.
Okay. And I will just add while I'm waiting on Michael to dial back in. Oh, there he is. I had, this is back like the beginning of last year or whatever, I created a page that's actually called Rakhma and Khooba, and it gives all that explanation that Michael just went through on the Rakhma and Khooba love. So I'll put that link in the notes for today as well, so you can go out and actually read it. Welcome back, Michael. Let's see what you sound like. I don't hear anything.
Okay, let's try it this way. Is that any better?
No. You're still a little bit bubbly. I mean, I can understand what you're saying, but it's very bubbly. Did you move? Because you were very clear up until just a couple minutes ago. And now you're gone.
Okay, one other way to try it. Let's try it like this. Is that any better?
Not really.
No. Well,
Craig just put his hand up. Let me see. Maybe, Craig, is he coming through clear on your end? Okay.
Hello?
Craig just put his hand up. Let me see. Maybe, Craig, is he coming through clear on your end?
He's coming through clear, but you're not. You're the one that's bubbly to me. Yeah. He's coming through clear, but you're not. You're the one that's bubbly.
Okay, I hung up and dialed back in, and Craig, I see you're still on. Michael's disappeared again.
Okay.
No,
Well,
this is fine, huh?
Yeah. I'm listening to both my phone and my computer, so I don't know. I could be doing something.
I can hear the echo in the background.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could mute the computer or whatever in the background. Michael's back with us now. Let's see if it's better.
Okay.
Let's see if we got any better
Michael?
sound now.
Oh,
Yes.
perfect.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I shifted over the calling function on it, so we'll see if it holds. So anyway, I was talking about 9 bits of data are all that go into the perceptual constructs of our mind, and what drives, what controls that whole process, what recruits information out of the 10,000 brain cells firing to become the featured 9 bits is our goals. So it's the driver for the process. So the reason you cancel the goal, and once this comes clear, it's like, oh, that, you know, why would I let go of a perfectly good goal? I don't let go of a perfectly good goal because I don't want whatever it is or that I have to give it up. I cancel that goal because I notice that if I load it in my mind uses corrupt data, hostility or fear, to build my perception, the light for my earthly life. So all of a sudden, the light is darkness. I'm cut off from higher guidance, and I'm stuck in an hostility or fear set of brain cells from the past. So when I cancel the goal, what happens, that being the driver for perception, is that perception based in darkness collapses in on itself. And if I'm breathing, and if I'm in willingness, and if I've done step 4 on the worksheet, which is really powerfully bring love present, then when I cancel that goal and the perception, the resulting perception collapses, it collapses in on its own footprint. So now I have access to my own unconscious mind. You'll remember we've quoted several times Carl Jung, who says, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Now, many people only ever see their unconscious dynamics when those unconscious dynamics are projected into their brain's image of others. That's where the hostility and fear comes in. So when I cancel the goal, literally the perceptual construct of my mind collapses in on itself, and if I breathe, then I have access to the underlying unresolved hostility or fear-based dynamic that needs to be healed. And if I breathe and just allow that to come forward and stand in awareness of it, then the hostility or fear-based perceptions begin to dissolve, and I'm freeing myself in that way of the replicant mind. I'm freeing myself of the past. So that's the real impact of canceling the goal, is it collapses perception and gives us access to what underlies it, so that if breathing, we can clean it up. Does that make sense?
While you were redialing back in, Sunny had to hang up. She was driving to pick up her partner. But, she just raised her hand again. But Craig is also on with it, and I've already turned his microphone on too.
Okay. Hey, Craig, how are you?
Hey, Michael, doing good. How are you?
I'm rocking, doing well. Getting ready to
good.
fly home and get my hands in the garden and hug Jeanie and my granddaughter.
I know, that sounds great. I traveled my
Me
whole
too.
career. And from the moment I left, either Sunday night or Monday morning, it's all I could think about was getting back home. The whole time I'm gone. Okay, I got
I hear you.
3 days.
So what's on your mind for today, sir?
Not much. I went back and was listening to our conversation the other day when I first called. I don't know what it was now, Tuesday.
Right.
Just
yes.
Some points I kind of tripped over. Nothing really. I mainly called to say you were sounding fine on the phone. It was Jeanie's phone that was doing the bubbling for me. But since you asked the question, the only thing that was kind of bothering me was right near the end of it. I was talking about, you were talking about how, so first of all, I said something about the M word, if you remember. And it's like,
yes, marriage?
Yeah, well, that wasn't from me. That was from Michelle. Michelle's the mama person. So all I was trying to point out when I was talking to you, and it came out very, very poorly, was Michelle's very independent, been very single, even during her marriages had a much different relationships with her spouses than I have with mine. So I was just saying, how do I, that was kind of where I was at, was like, I've been a couple. I've been locked at the hip, I've been with somebody for 28 years, and now I've gone from seeing somebody every day, and I haven't seen her in 4 years, so it's not a, there was nothing, you said something like that, I still have feelings about it, and that I don't have feelings about her, but I have feelings about what it feels like to be a couple that are different than Michelle's. So those are the things I was trying to cancel. Or not cancel Michelle, but cancel how that looks in my mind.
Your goal for it to be the same?
Yeah.
Well, and so what I hear you saying is you're sitting right on the edge of an opportunity to create something totally new and different for you. And that is a new model in your mind and a new process of creating what, if you choose to be a couple, what couplehood looks like.
Yeah.
And that will probably require letting go of a lot of goals where your mind wants to compare it to the past and go, well, it should be like this. Well, no, actually, if you create a new agreement and a new way of functioning together, then it's obviously going to be different. And if you allow yourself to get lost in comparing it with the past, then there are going to be a million reasons for hostility and fear. And, of course, then you get to clean up hostility and fear in your mind.
Yeah.
A good model, I spent 30-some years developing a model for relationship. I don't know whether Michelle has shared the commitment with you yet or not, but that commitment is the best set of words that I've found that support people living as love in relationship. So something along those lines might be a good starting point, and then, what are we going to create it to look like from here?
Right. It's actually my screensaver, a commitment letter.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I can try to figure out what it means. I can stare at it every day. I'm teasing. We looked at that like really early on. I said something that was, I don't remember what I said, but something. She was like, hey, I got to send you something. So, and here was a correction. I said something that violated your commitment letter.
Well, one of the wonderful things about life is it is fraught with opportunities to learn forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And the place where we can't hide what it is that we ultimately need to deal with is our relationships. That's why the workshop that I do on relationships is called Healing Through Relationships. When I first started to teach it, it was called Healing Your Relationships, because where I came from, I thought there was such a thing as a diseased relationship, which there's not. Every relationship is a perfect creation and will reflect back to those involved exactly what it is that they need to deal with. And so life gives us opportunities, and up come those old comparisons, and it's a chance to let go and consciously create something new.
Right.
So we'll certainly be on your team for doing that, if that's what you guys choose to do.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Awesome. All right, any thoughts for today?
No, not for me.
Okay, sir. Nice to say hello. Blessings. All right, Miss Jeanie, do we have anybody else on the phone queue with a hand up?
Well, I'm not sure if Sunny's where she can talk again. I've got her microphone on. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
All righty. Yeah, there's been a lot of the signal and Wi-Fi issues going on in the past 24 hours, I've noticed. Michael, the second question, and thank you for the first, But the second question is when you were doing the edit and recorded it and then added that to the YouTube or to the wall, during the edit, you were mentioning a technology that I believe...
I'm not sure what you're talking about editing. Back up a little bit. I don't know what you're talking about with edits and what I edited and technology. Tell me more, please, so I can catch up with my brain cells aren't with it.
When you were doing the reading from your transcripts, manuscripts, and invited people's opinions on that, there was, in that read, you mentioned a piece of technology that I believe was registered through the palm of one's hand to reinstate the body more toward wholeness in calming things down.
Yes.
And what is it called?
Actually, if I put the microphone a little closer, you can hear it humming along there. I have my hand in it as we speak. It's called the Avicen. And it's the most powerful adjunct to health, totally and completely non-invasive whole body treatment for restoring health that I know of. It's just an extremely powerful piece of equipment. And basically what it does is that in the palm of your hand, there's a heat exchanger. It's called the arteriovenous anastomosis. If you think about, it's late at night and you're under the covers and you're overheated, what do? You either stick your foot out or you stick your hand out and you get to cool down. Well, there's a similar device in the foot as there is in the palm of the hand. The Avicen is designed, it's about the size of a bread box. You turn it on and there's a heat plate inside of it. You put your hand in a plastic mitt for sanitary and pressure reasons, and you put your hand into the device and you put it on a hot plate. When you turn the device on, it creates a vacuum around your hand, which causes the blood vessels to distend, to expand, and it draws more blood into your hand. It keeps those blood vessels open, and it transfers heat into the blood directly. Within a period of about 10 minutes, all of the blood in your body is warmed by just a little less than 1 degree. And when that happens, then your structure, 2 major things occur. One is muscles start to relax. When you pour heated blood over muscles, they tend to soften and relax. That's one of the things that the Avicen is approved for as a Class II medical device by the FDA. The other is that where you provide warmed blood and you increase microcirculation, the restoration of oxygen nutrition to the cell tends to alleviate the cell of pain. Approximately a 5% deficiency in oxygen in a cell, and that cell's in excruciating pain. So what the Avicen does is it warms the blood, causes relaxation to occur, which increases microcirculation. So now you've got more oxygen, more nutrition, more enzymes, more proteins, what have you, being delivered to the cell. At the same time, the eliminative channels around the cell, their function is enhanced, so wastes are being drawn away from the cell. And that just changes everything to do with tension and pain. So that's what the Avicen is it's a natural whole body treatment. There's a video, or pardon me, if you'd like, I'll send you some information about it, but there's a particular picture where the Institute of Microcirculation in Europe did a picture of the nail bed of a human fingernail. And if you look at one of the pictures prior to the treatment, that nail bed has a couple of little red spots in it, but that's about it. After 20 minutes on the Avicen, the same fingernail bed, taken picture with the same camera, all of a sudden it's just flooded with blood. And so the objective here is to open the microcirculation channels so that there is blood flow throughout the system where it has been restricted. For people who live in a state of excessive stress or have chronic hostility or fear, they live in a state that's called sympathetic dominance. Sympathetic dominance means at the fight of a hat, somebody's ready to, at the drop of a hat, somebody's ready to fight or run. And what sympathetic dominance does, it's part of the autonomic nervous system. When there's excessive stress, hostility, or fear, the autonomic nervous system shifts into survival mode, which means it gets ready for, we've heard it called fight, fright. So it gets ready for fight, fright, fear, freezing, or fawning. And the reason that happens is that the blood is drained away from the higher functions of the body and mind. Like, for instance, if you're in the jungle and a lion's chasing you, you don't need to do a calculus problem. You don't need the frontal lobes of your brain to be lit up and operating. In fact, it would be a waste of energy and a distraction. So one of the things that happens when people go into sympathetic dominance is the blood is drained away from the frontal lobes of the brain. It's drained away from digestion. It's drained away from elimination. It's drained away from reproduction. None of those things are needed if a lion is chasing you in the jungle. Now, that sympathetic dominance is a wonderful response because that blood flow that's drained away from the higher functions is now available to the large muscles to either fight or run and hopefully survive. And, you know, once the survival has taken place, once you've escaped the tiger and it didn't eat you, then the sympathetic dominant state is supposed to melt away and go back to the parasympathetic activation, which means that all of those higher functions are turned on: rest, digestion, and regeneration. So what the Avicen does, if somebody lives in chronic stress, chronic hostility and fear, then they're in chronic sympathetic dominance. That means that there's probably been a lot of congestion in the blood vessels that would take oxygen nutrition to all of those higher functions. And so over time, the Avicen tends to open those pathways, dissolve the excessive wastes, and restore circulation throughout the whole structure. So in a nutshell, that's what the Avicen does. It helps to shift people from sympathetic dominance into the parasympathetic system, which activates all of those higher centers, and all of a sudden sleep, digestion, reproduction, they're all things that can come back online because they've been voided by hostility or fear, by the sympathetic nervous system being in charge. Does that make sense to your question?
It does. I'm very familiar with CERSET and those types of technologies, and I love that, you know, frequency and vibration, and more of those things are coming into play to support people in your work, this work. It gets the body to catch up. It's like it does everything that you just explained, to where the body itself, though it is what it is, and what we've all experienced in the world, shows up differently for different people, but at the same time still doing our internal work so that you're actually more ready to receive those technologies and frequencies and become more about them. Thank you, Michael, very much.
And the Avicen isn't nearly as much a frequency device as it is a heat device. It totally works with what's natural to the body. There are many frequency devices out there that are really body hacks. That is, they don't work with the natural systems of the body. They actually interrupt the natural systems and can be a benefit. I mean, there's some awesome technology out there. But the Avicen does not work with frequency. The Avicen works primarily by putting heat into the structure, and that heat helps to make that shift from sympathetic dominance to parasympathetic, which then naturally activates the healing mode. It naturally activates, restores digestion, reproduction, rest, and cleans out the pathways that have been chronically congested by a restriction of blood flow because of sympathetic dominance.
Thank you for that huge clarification. Appreciate that very much, Michael. And thank you both, Michael and Jeanie. Appreciate you. Love you. And love for you.
Have a blessed one.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Well, Miss Jeanie, we're down to about 8 minutes or so. Do we have anybody on the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
No, it's all quiet.
Well, if you're out there in listener land, push 1. We need your voice. What's on your mind? How can we support you? Is this conversation all making sense? If there's anything about it that doesn't make sense, then push 1 and ask about it. Or is there something that needs a more complete explanation? And what we're looking to do is to bring both. Oh, great. Let's go for it.
Sorry, I was trying to Google the name of the device you're talking about. Is it Avacen or?
Yeah, AVACEN. And I'll send you some on it if you're interested.
Okay. Yeah, I am.
I'll send you some links.
Okay. I would have just texted, but since nobody's calling in, I'll just ask the question.
Say again. I didn't quite hear you.
I was going to just text you, but since nobody was calling, I didn't figure I was interrupting anybody.
Oh, no, that's perfectly fine. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's a powerful device. I've been using it now for about 3 years, and I've worked with about 100 or so people with it over the last 3 years, and the things that I've seen happen are just, when I look from the point of view of the medical work that I've done, are just like beyond what anybody would think would be possible. Yeah. Kinds of change in pain patterns, muscular function, overall vitality, sleep. One of the things that many people do, like Jeanie and I keep it on the bed at night, and the last thing at night we do the Avacen before sleep, and it takes sleep to a whole other level for most people. In fact, many people, the first time they put their hand in it, they'll do a demo of it, they'll put their hand in it, and they just clunk, they're gone, they go to sleep. Pain management, a couple of people that I've seen, one woman, and she may be on the show, and if she is, perhaps she'll kick in and raise her hand, but she's done her work for the last 30 years or so, and she had polio as a child and had post-polio syndrome. She was getting up into her upper 70s, and over the years they had done, the medical profession had done 4 joint replacements, and she was having pain in her shoulder to the point where she couldn't even pick up a glass of water. Pain was so excruciating. And she went to her doctor, and the doctor said, oh, it's bone-on-bone pain. We're going to have to do another joint replacement. About that time, she bought an Avacen. And 2 months later, she was moving, and everything that the movers didn't move, she packed into boxes and loaded in her car by herself with an arm that couldn't pick up a glass of water, unloaded it, and unpacked it when she got to her new home. That's the kind of thing I've seen happen with pain. I know one gentleman who's on the show once in a while, he had hip pain at night. He just couldn't sleep at night because his hips were always in pain. He got the Avacen, and he sleeps now because he doesn't have hip pain anymore. Actually, a few weeks after he got it, he said he'd gone on a flight trip, and it was just a one-night trip that he was doing, so he didn't bother taking it. And he was like, man, am I sorry I didn't take it. I didn't sleep the whole night because my hip pain was back. So, and over time, one of the things that I've observed is that as you clean congested pathways out for blood flow, then the effects tend to become more permanent. But in the meantime, it helps to keep the blood flow, when one is in that sympathetic dominant state, shifted over to the parasympathetic, which then really enhances those higher functions and tends to get rid of pain. So that's what the Avacen does, and I'll drop you an email with some links in it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, lots of love, blessings. Okay, Miss Jeanie, we're down to about 2 minutes, I think. Any thoughts for you, sweetie?
No, I just I posted our Avacen link in the notes for today, and also sent it to you in an email because they have made a couple changes in Avacen. But
right. Okay, cool. Awesome. So joining with each and every person here in breathing into that space where love resides within you, activating that presence of love in you as you. And as you breathe, just notice each breath that you take, how far into your physiology your breath goes. And allow yourself to just key into that presence of love and allow that presence of love to move in you with the breath, to distribute that presence of the active presence of love throughout your tissue structure. And as we breathe, literally the energetic patterns that we've been hiding by holding the breath start to become visible. That's not always a Dr. Feel-Good process, but it is always a Dr. Heal-Good process. It's something very desirable, something that you want to have happen. And so as one moves into deeper and deeper states of physiological relaxation, the muscle fibers that have been uptight, just by breathing, will tend to soften. And as they soften, the flow of energy through the cell is enhanced. You remember this man, Yeshua. Well, they put all kinds of purposes in his mouth. They've got him doing doctrines and dogma and all sorts of things he never provided. He basically said, I'm here for one reason. I'm here to bring you life and bring it more abundantly. In my offering, the best definition that I've found of life is that life is love flowing through a cell. And anything we do to inhibit that is going to be pain in the cell. To enhance the flow of love through our cellular structure, to remove the blocks to the awareness of love's presence will tend to strengthen the active presence of love flowing through the cell and therefore enhance your life. The whole purpose of this show is to enhance your life. And of course it's done with smoke and mirrors because by supporting you in enhancing your life, we get to enhance our lives too. So everybody wins. So delighted